States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Oliphant.
Here.
Hush. Gale.
Here.
Delaney.
Here. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Oliphant,
I'll second.
second by Delaney. All in favor?
Aye.
At this point, we'll have public comment. You have a limit of 3 minutes per person on agenda items and local government issues.
Just a comment on the agenda item about the closed-circuit TVs. The city is hard up for money. We had to cut back on the library budget and everything. And I really think people don't want to see themselves on closed-circuit TV even more than that.
It's not TV, and they wouldn't be on TV.
Well, you know what I mean.
It would maybe mainly be a tool for the police department.
It would be for anything. I mean, I think there are other ways to go with this, and I think I mentioned them in other places. There are other ways you could offer a reward. There are other things that you can do without an expensive system that invades people's privacy.
Thank you. Consent agenda, minutes, city council 7/8/24, library board 7/9/24, utility board 7/10/24, July 22nd, 2024 claims, and June 2024 financial reports. Annual liquor renewal for Moski's Barbecue LLC, 5-day liquor license for American Legion Post 528. Is there any concerns on the consent agenda?
I got a question. Seems like we have $851 for Lynch and Dallas lawyers. I mean, is there something we need to be aware of on that?
Do you have the bills? There's a couple different things on there. But obviously, if we have an issue that we're dealing with internal, like with staff, then the council has approved that that's who we go to. So we had Mr. Lucas that emailed all of you that I needed to deal with him on making sure that we were having Mr. Lucas follow the water and sewer appropriately and that we handled that. So that was one of them. And that was 2 of the bills, actually. They had another attorney do that. So that was the main 2. That was the only 2. And then a personnel matter when we had the personnel meeting that the personnel committee had directed me to talk to them.
Yeah, we directed her to reach out to the
Or was
attorney.
it before me?
You were
Okay.
you were at the meeting.
Okay.
That meeting, the first meeting that you were at. So those are the only 2 items on there. So I try to be conservative about calling them, but obviously they're there as an extension of the staff if we have any legal questions before taking action and then wishing we had called them.
Is there any other questions? If none, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Oliphant,
I'll second.
second by Delaney. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 7, open a public hearing on a zoning code change for a special exemption for 6-foot on unenclosed porches. Need a motion to go into public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Gale,
Second?
second by Oliphant. Roll call.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
We are in public hearing.
So I'll maybe start out with this. We've had a couple requests for porches in conversation, none that went before the Board of Adjustments. So when people come in to talk about different things, I'll make sure that they understand the law, the kinds of questions that they have to answer before the board. And in the 2 cases, they have not actually applied for a variance. And the second one, Brad Buffelli, is here. And in conversation with him and Scott Casey, they had kind of talked about the fact that one of the subdivisions that has been built back, say in the 70s, 80s, maybe even 90s, a lot of those houses were built where the front of the house was set right to the front setback, and then no porches were made, so they look fairly simple on the front. and that people have a desire, instead of looking for a new house, if they want to, kind of fancy it up in the front, that they would be allowed to add a porch, which currently the zoning code does not allow for that. And when you look at the main questions, it doesn't mean that there's never an opportunity to get a variance under the questions that are asked of a variance, but it would seem highly unlikely that there would be a hardship. And so when Scott and Brad came to me about it and asked if there was a way that we could change the code, I would not recommend that we just simply change what is currently 25 and make that something less, because it's a slippery slope that if the Buffellis need 5 feet and then the next person needs 6 and 7, and then where do you kind of draw the line? And so I presented that to our city attorney as to how he thought it would be best to handle that from a zoning perspective, and their recommendation was to look at it from a special exception perspective. And when you look at the difference, a variance is saying that these are our codes and you have to have a hardship, whereas a special exception, the main thing that we do for special exceptions right now is solar panels. And you know that we've kind of tweaked that even in the last, since most of you have been on here. I think, Chad, you were even on. So in the last year. And we're basically in that case saying, as a general rule, we're okay with that, but that it's not actually permitted, but you do have to go before the Board of Adjustment and present that. And then if they look at it and can answer the questions that it seems safe and okay with the neighborhood, then they would be granted that special exception. The process is fairly similar. You apply, it's $200. You have, your neighbors are notified if they're within 200 feet. So the process is very similar, but the questions to be answered are different. And our attorneys have advised that if we want to allow this, that the special exception is that way. We had our Planning and Zoning meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission is the body that is to review the zoning code. I know when Planning and Zoning was there, we had members of the Board of Adjustment attend and ask why they weren't participating in that process. And one of the council members had asked about that as well. So when you look at the zoning code, the Planning and Zoning Commission is the body that recommends to the city council any changes in the zoning code. Whereas the Board of Adjustment is the body that then, if there is a code for someone to apply for a variance or a special exception, that is the board that they go to. But when you look at our process, and that's Board of Adjustment is not part of recommending to the council, and that's why we follow the law of they are required to put a notice in the paper at Planning and Zoning, have a public hearing. You are as well, and again, that's dictated by city code and common, like that's what you have to do in every community in Iowa. So we went through that process. When the Board of Adjustment members spoke, they felt that it was not the legal approach, that use and structures are proper for a special exception. I went back to our attorney and made sure that that question was addressed, and that, again, he says this is a structure, and so it is appropriate for a special exception. So I tried to make sure that their concerns were addressed. And so Planning and Zoning is recommending this, and basically what it's saying is that if you have a lot, we divide right now 2 different kinds of setbacks. We have 80 feet and more or less than 80 feet. And our 80 feet and more requires a 25-foot front and rear setback and 8-foot side setbacks. So this would only be applicable to properties that are 80 feet or more. And they would allow a 6-foot variance, not variance, but an exception in the front, where instead of being 25 feet for the setback, it could go to as little as 19 feet, given that's where we get the extra 6. That would include the overhang. And then we clarify in the ordinance, which was the request of Planning and Zoning, that we define that an unenclosed porch has no sidewalls, no windows or screens, and that, so basically it can't be a carport, it can't be a garage. It's not a solid part of the house structure, part of the house. Like, there's no room or anything like that. So it's strictly open porches, including the overhang, and you can have up to an extra 6 feet. So that is the recommendation of originally what the attorney did, tweaked with the recommendations from Planning and Zoning.
So that I understand, sorry, is it a shorter time frame than a variance, like a special exception would be a shorter time frame?
No, you still have to put an ad in the paper, like the process is still the same. So you put an ad in the paper, it's typically a week or 2 out, and then we notify the 200 feet neighbors and go through that process in the same way. So timeline is not really any different, although Yeah, it's not any different.
Okay.
I'm Brad Buffelli. We live at 1001 7th Avenue Southeast, and so we're in the process of doing an addition. Of course, if you're spending money on addition, why not add a porch on if you can? You know, why not spend the extra money? So we're on an 80-foot lot, and that requires a 25-foot minimum setback. What we're planning on doing is put a 6-foot wide front porch with a 1-foot wide overhang. But by doing that, according to Scott's tape measure, we'd be about 2.5 feet into the front restriction. And so I don't think anybody here has a problem per se with that, you know, type of encroachment into the setbacks. I think the question becomes, you know, what is the legal, you know, process, the right way of doing this? And so, you know, when we approached Lisa, she said, well, I'm not sure if it's going to qualify for a hardship. You know, the variance board's there. And so I just suggested, well, why don't we take a look at the law? You know, the law was put in place back in 1978. Maybe it's time to change this. And so very grateful that she started that process of looking into what we can and can't do. And we had a really good productive meeting here at the planning board last week, and members Clay and Linda spoke up about the variance board and hardships. And so I don't think this special exception takes anything from the Board of Adjustments, the variance board. They still have the right, if somebody wants to apply for a hardship, they can use their experience and on that and make a decision if somebody's due a hardship. But look into this a little further. I was looking at the city of Dubuque's, how they handled their zoning matters. And of course, they get quite a bit of zoning requests compared to us here. But they have their special exception is a little bit worded differently than what we have here in the code. Our code defines the special exceptions as that the Board of Adjustments can hear and decide only such special exceptions as the Board of Adjustments is specifically authorized to pass on by the terms of the ordinance. And maybe I'm wrong looking at this, but I think it's more than just solar panels that the Board of Adjustments can look at. They can look at, it says, private kindergartens, day nurseries, and preschools, 1 parking space plus 1 parking space per employee provided. 2, a private garage not to be used for commercial purposes on a non-conforming vacant lot. And they can also look at businesses providing special exceptions. And so all this proposed ordinance does is make it so that way, you know, I want to make sure we're clear this isn't like a special exception for Brad Buffelli. This is a special exception for anybody in the community who can, if they're fancying up the house like we are intending to do, that, hey, to give a little bit better legal footing for the decisions that the board makes, has a special exception function, in addition to maybe a hardship, depending on what the case it may be. But and then they still have, the Board of Variance has to still make some findings as to whether there's any restrictions on ingress and egress to the property, off-street park, and if they apply, you know, we're talking 2.5, 3 feet into the front setbacks. You know, the other thing too, to take a look at those lots too, you know, although the city has an 8-foot easement there for sidewalks, those sidewalks have never been put in. I don't think they will ever be put in. The cost of doing that and the time for doing that's passed. That's obviously something that planning, zoning, and the council at a future date can take a look at. But if we're looking at any sort of restrictions or blocking views or anything like that, I don't see any of that being really a hazard there by allowing people to put, you know, we're not talking about extending the front porch all the way out to we're defining a reasonable line. Dubuque City Code too, you know, this might be something down the road that to give a little bit more authority for the variance board, but the Dubuque City Code, they talk about special exceptions, and they give a very broad definition, which basically says from the literal enforcement of the zoning codes. And so I was going through their minute meetings, and every one of these people are like, want to build a garage right on the setback, want to build a deck, want to build a porch. Well, their zoning board can pass that with a special exception. They don't have to get into that hardship finding, which I believe is the concern that the attorney for the city has, as well as Lisa does. And why does that matter? Well, you know, I'm not the city attorney. I am an attorney at, that's what I do for a living. I'm not here to make recommendations or give advice or anything. I'm just here as my public capacity as a resident, or as a resident of Cascade, working with city government to make decisions regarding, the welfare of the people here in town. But there was a case from 2021. It's called Early versus Board of Adjustments. It came out of Sierra Gordo County, Mason City area. And in that case, what happened was, before asking for permission, somebody built a pergola, which is just basically like an enclosed deck area, but there's space in between, 21 inches from the side setback. And of course, someone called zoning. Zoning says, hey, we got a problem here, you're gonna have to go in the variance board. And they held a variance board meeting. And the variance board said, over the objection of a neighbor, because the neighbor's like, I don't want this right up against my side setback. The neighbor said, we object, but the variance board passed it. And as Clay pointed out, the appeal process from the variance board isn't to the council, it's to the district court. And so the district court heard this and said, you know what, variance board, you're right. Neighbor wasn't satisfied, so the neighbor took it up to the Court of Appeals, Iowa Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals decision said, Judge, you're right. Variance board, you're right. Neighbor, you're wrong. Neighbor, though, goes ahead and files it up to the Iowa Supreme Court. That's your last appeal right. And the Iowa Supreme Court said, you know what? Court of Appeals, District Court, and Variance Board, you're wrong. There's no hardship here. So you guys were talking about bills here before we started the meeting. You just imagine how much cost each one of these steps take. And my experience, I tell everybody, it's going to cost you about $5,000–6,000 at each level for a cost. And so it just makes sense to me that if we have the ability to put this in a special exception, this gives an opportunity for everybody to do so if they want to apply for it. And I still have to go in front of the variance board. And variance boards, they serve a very good, important purpose, because it does put the public on notice that, hey, there's going to be some building that's going to go around in your neighborhood, and if you have concerns about it, now's the time to speak or forever hold your peace, and that's good versus somebody waking up the next morning and be like, hey, there's a pergola 21 inches right up against my front porch space. So, like I said, this isn't a situation where we're trying to find a special exceptions for the Boffelli family. It's just, hey, let's take a look at our zoning ordinance. Let's see if it really makes sense from 1978 to 2024 going forward. And, perhaps the planning zoning, like I said, with some of these other issues that have arisen in the community about getting variances or not, maybe the planning zoning board needs to adopt something like Dubuque to give a little bit more leeway on allowing people to put structures that are outside the restriction, either setbacks or like that. So, and so that's what we're saying. The other thing, I know it's nobody's fault here, but we are moving forward with our construction. Ideally, we'd like to start, early August. I know that, the ordinance here would require potentially 3 readings. I'd ask that we, just get it done tonight. We've already been in front of the planning and zoning board. I know you're kind of short a couple members here tonight, but we really help us, because I still got to go in front of the variance board here probably within 2 weeks to get that done. So that's all I have to say on it. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay, we're Linda Huffman and Clay Gavin from the Board of Adjustments, and we just have some questions and comments.
A couple of things I want to clarify from Lisa's letter to the council about it's not in our memory that we use the term illegal. We were more concentrating on the appropriateness of a special exception for this reason, more so than legal, that it was illegal to do so. At any rate, whatever was said, it is our opinion that the council can do whatever it wants. There's no accusation here that if you pass this tonight or did whatever you did tonight, that it is somehow illegal. That's not where we're going with this. Our approach was that it's basically a setback or yard side issue. To date, without addressed as a special exception. There have been changes with setbacks and yard side issues over the years since the 70s when this ordinance went into effect, and there could be one here as well. And from what I'm hearing from everybody involved, is that that's the issue. Setback is the issue. It's not a matter of whether or not special exceptions are appropriate or not, even. It's the issue. So we see this as there's three ways this can be handled. One is to do nothing. Do nothing would allow Brad or those like him in that neighborhood or any other who need a setback relaxation to come before the Board of Adjustment. Of late, and that has been the case for many years. I was on the Board of Adjustment another term many years ago. I was on as mayor and council and so on, and there has always been kind of a steady stream of requests for variances for setback. And most of those, in my memory, were approved. Maybe even a vast majority were approved. None of them ever ended up in the Saragordo County case type thing, but that was a special situation there. Keep that in mind. That was someone who just went ahead and built basically on the property line and then went through the court system, then went back after the fact to the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment said, well, okay, it's there, leave it there, and then went through the court system for permission to leave it there. Got all the way to the Supreme Court before they said, no, that's not cool. The issue here, the word here is hardship. That's what catches with Lisa when she brings this up to you guys and brings it up to us, is hardship. And I think she is misinterpreting that. Hardship is not defined in our ordinance. It's not defined. I don't even think it's defined in the zoning section of Iowa Code. Hardship is left to the view of the fact finders, in this case, the Board of Adjustment. We decide whether it's a hardship or not. So you just heard Brad's case, and he brought that to us. He apparently was somewhat talked out of that by Lisa. We never saw this case, Brad's case. He would have come before us looking for a 2 or 2.5 foot relaxation of a front yard in an area that doesn't have sidewalks. Would we have approved it? Can't say. Every case is different. But would we have given that consideration? Absolutely we would. And I do know from being around this for a long time is that many such cases were allowed. My house is a good example. I have way less than the setback was from that house, and that we did. The neighbors were notified. Everybody came, and no one had an objection to it. We were allowed to re-put a porch on our house that had been there years before. We went from a stoop to a porch, but there had been a porch there. I think that the board took that all into consideration and approved our setback. And many, many have been like that. And through that whole time, through all of that history, I can think of not one single case appealed to Iowa District Court. Not one through that whole time. Because if the board is doing, if the Board of Adjustment is doing its job, listening to the neighbors, listening to the people who are affected by this thing, there isn't a controversy. There almost is never a controversy, even with setback stuff. Once in a while, now, if someone were to plop down a pergola 1.5 feet from the property line, there could be controversy. So that's why that Saragordo case has some significance. But for its case, for our situation here, we've never had, to my knowledge, a case appealed anywhere, much less to the Supreme Court. Nor do I expect that. We listen to the neighbors. If there are objections, we listen to those, approve some, not approve others, and so on, if there's going to be a problem. So in our opinion, there's 3 ways to handle this. Do nothing and let the variance process through the Board of Adjustment play out. I think that solves these cases almost 100%. To do that, Lisa has to quit advising people that we are not following law when we don't find hardship. Hardship is in the eye of the beholder, and it could be our hardship. And people may disagree with us about whether there's hardship or not, but hardship is not, since it's not specifically defined, it has to be done, has to be handled through the judgment of the 5 people, currently only 4, but further be glad for you guys to get that 5th person appointed. But it's done through those 5 people listening to the needs and the views of the community. So you can, if you leave it alone, do nothing, this problem can be, now, we're not saying Brad's going to get his. We never know until we hear the case, whether or not it's there or not. But we also don't know if Brad applies for a special exception, and he's going to get that approved as well. That also is up to us to approve that. There's actually a longer list of things that the Board of Adjustment has to make findings on for a special exception than there is for a variance. It's a longer list. It does not include the word hardship, but is a longer list of findings. We must make sure it's compatible with the neighborhood, traffic, site views, everything. It's actually a longer list. So there's no guarantee either way. There is one way you all can guarantee that if you are in agreement that a 19-foot front yard is enough, when at least 6 feet of it is an open porch, you can fix that. Maybe not tonight, but if you rewrite your setback requirements for these R1, R2 districts, just like this is, that you're okay with a 19-foot front yard, as long as 6 feet of it is an open front porch, problem solved. Because then it is automatic that if you're okay with that setback, it's in the ordinance. Brad doesn't have to ask for a special exception. Brad doesn't have to ask for a variance. He just asks for a building permit and it's approved. And we don't think, again, we weren't notified of this, and I will clarify a little bit. Lisa's absolutely correct. The process is zoning board than you guys. We thought that we should try to make it a practice that when we're affected by the outcome of a change, we would at least be notified. One of our members happened to see this posting, is how we became involved in it. I didn't notice it until one of our other members did. So we appreciate, even though it's not a requirement, the courtesy when it affects us to be notified of the possibility. But if that was done, you wouldn't need us. Special exceptions, I believe, are a $200 filing fee, I believe. Not sure how much variance costs, but you wouldn't need either one of those if you simply change the ordinance to allow for the setbacks you must be okay with to even consider the special exception. So that's where we're at. 3 choices. We believe that this one is the least preferable of the 3. Either leave it alone, or my favorite is change the setback, the front yard requirements in R1 and R2 to reflect that if you have a porch there, an unenclosed porch for 6 feet of it, it's okay without any special exception or variance. Right. Thank you.
Any questions for us?
So you'd need to rewrite the wording.
Well, someone would.
We
Yeah.
would.
You
Yeah.
have to be the zoning board, I'm sure, so. but-
Well, I'm sure if the city attorney was presented with, we would prefer to go this route instead of the route he already took, he could easily write language that would affect that. As a matter of fact, the language, if you do pass this either way, another suggestion is you further define what unenclosed is. There's a few things added between the zoning board meeting and tonight's meeting about no windows, no walls, but it doesn't mention things like lattice and other things that can obstruct view. And my understanding is the reason we want this unenclosed is so that you can see through it. And if you put lattice up, I would say it was in compliance, but you wouldn't be able to see through that to any degree. And people are very likely in porches to put tarps or lattice panels and so on, just to block sun,
A shade screen.
shade screens, that type of stuff too. So even if you do pass, whatever you pass it, I would, it certainly be our preference that you are more definitive about what is allowed in a special exception.
And we don't know how many people have come forward. I mean, we know one that came and said he decided not to come before us because he was told we wouldn't probably pass it. So Brad is possibly the first or the second person, and then, does that happen? Is that gonna happen every time somebody wants something tweaked, that you'll talk about a special exemption? I guess that's where I'm confused, but that's just me.
Yeah, to follow up on Linda's point, in our discussions with individual members, we would prefer that people not be dissuaded from coming before the Board of Adjustment for variances. I know that hardship is there, but that is for us to determine, not for Lisa to determine. And they shouldn't be dissuaded or given some inference that we are somehow not following the law or the court's guidance. I worked with the court system for 30 years. The court does not give guidance to Boards of Adjustment. That's not what they do. What courts do is record their judgments on cases so that other judges, when given an exact same case, which almost never happens, can apply some of that precedent to their decision. But that's as close to guidance as you get. And again, all of that is moot because in our situation, as in many situations, these cases almost never get that period, much less to the Court of Appeals or to the Supreme Court. That's really not a consideration to worry about. Yes, it would be expensive if it ever happened, but it just does not happen. And it doesn't happen when we do our job and get everybody on the same page at our meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just point out that it seems like you can get two things accomplished here. One, appeasing what is being advised by the city attorney, and also appeasing what the Board of Adjustments want to have done by passing this ordinance. You know, they still have retained the right to have hardship determinations, but this just gives them a little bit more strength in their decisions. As far as moving it back from a setback line to 19 feet, you're going to have a lot more people at that meeting besides some people coming in for a 6-foot encroachment for a porch. And so those are pretty significant issues, I think, that would have to be, you know, in front of the planning and zoning before deciding that. Maybe that's the case to do, but we're just looking at what is the, you know, when you tackle a project, you kind of do surgery, right? You just do enough surgery so that way you can get the result what we need to have done. And that for our particular situation is, hey, we'd like to put a porch on to have it functional, you know, because we could do a 4-foot porch, but that's not really functional. I'm not going to spend my time and money on that, but to get us where we need to be compliant with the code, because I'm not going to be this guy who put that pergola up. I'm going to do things the right way, and I believe coming down here and going through the process, again, the 7 members of the Planning Zoning Board heard these arguments and are making the recommendation based on their collective wisdom, too, that the council should pass it, and just would also reiterate their request to waive the next readings on it. Thanks.
Thank you. What's everybody think?
I've been torn all week, and I probably drank more beer in 5 days trying to figure this out. But I talked to a wise old man tonight, and he was on the Planning and Zoning Board for probably 20-some years, and I explained the situation we're having, and he basically said what Brad wanted to do. He goes, if the Planning and Zoning Board approved it, then, you know, you guys should approve it too, you know, and he goes, that's what he would done when he was on the board, you know, so I understand Clay and Linda's point, I really do. I mean, it's, you know, we need to be going through that too, but I think for people in town to improve their housing and make it look nice, I think we need to start there. I said, there's a lot more things we can worry about. You know, we got downtown to worry about, these people that don't want to do anything, but we got people like Brad that want to improve his house and, you know, make it more valuable and stuff like that. I'm for it. I know it's probably not going to be for the variance board, the adjustments board, you know, a decision they're going to like to hear from me, but the zoning board approved it, so I'm happy with it, so.
I look at it the same way. I don't see it taking away from the variance board. I think it just adds another tool in their belt. I really don't think it's going to change. Everything's still going to end up in their lap. They just have different options when it comes into it. And more importantly for me, the zoning board approved this and they want to approve. So that's where I stand with it. I mean, that is why we have other boards, and that is their zone, and that's what they recommend. So I don't see a reason not to.
Megan?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think that if the Planning and Zoning Board this is their recommendation, I do feel like we should respect that. I also think taking it, like, if we eliminate the hardship whole portion of that, like, as a variance, you need the hardship piece. It takes out some of that, you know, everybody's got to have an opinion on it or whatever, or decide what it means. It's too broad of a term, right, to Clay's point. And so this, I think, helps eliminate some of that. So I would go with what Planning and Zoning has recommended.
How do you all feel about your willingness to, like, you'd have to do the first motion would be if you're willing to suspend the rules, which you could do all tonight. Brad knows that what I was suggesting was a second meeting instead of a third meeting, which would delay it. And that's actually 3 weeks because this is one of our 5 Mondays. So you're welcome to, that would be all 3 of you would have to vote to suspend the rules. And
I make a
then,
motion to suspend the rules. and
That's first.
pass. Yep.
okay, so all you're voting on now is suspending the rules.
Second?
Should we close the public hearing?
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
you gotta do that first.
Need a motion to close public hearing, go into regular session.
I make a motion to close public hearing.
Motion by Gale,
I'll second it.
second by Oliphant, roll call.
Delaney?
Aye.
Oliphant?
Aye.
Gale?
Aye.
And we'll go to number 9, consideration of ordinance number 18-24, special exception for 6-foot on unenclosed porches in R1 and R2 districts.
But you're gonna make the
I'll
motion
make
to
a
do it
motion. One reading.
in this.
Second?
I'll second it.
Second by Delaney. All in favor?
Aye.
Do you need a roll
I
call?
need a
You
roll
need
Or
call
roll
for that,
call,
Mayor.
gotcha.
Sorry. Oliphant?
Aye.
Gale?
Aye.
Delaney?
Aye.
So now you're voting on the underlying original motion, which somebody would be to pass the ordinance, either as presented or if you have something to tweak it on.
To Clay's point, I do think we should add the word lattice in here. Like, that's a good point.
To not have lattice, I think you could have lattice under it, but not, like, we want to have, like,
Unobstructed view.
Yeah.
you would allow railings though, because if, like depending on how tall your porch is above the ground, state code would require you to have railings.
Yes.
So
I don't have
railings
an
are
issue
not
with railings,
permitted.
But I don't want upper lattice.
So are you saying above the ground level? Like, because people put lattice under their porch if it's raised,
Yeah.
right? So are you okay with that? But you-
Above railing height level is what I'm thinking.
Okay,
We should not have it up there.
so no lattice you want to add? Yes, no lattice? You guys okay with that?
Yep.
So as presented with that addition, if somebody wants to.
I need a motion on ordinance.
I'll make a motion.
18-24. Motion by Delaney.
I'll second it.
Second by Gale. Roll call.
Gale?
Aye.
Delaney?
Aye.
Oliphant?
Aye.
Number 10, consideration of resolution number 73-24, library board appointment.
We had one person re-upped their request, and then we had 2 new people after our recent advertisement, and the mayor can go over his, we had a new person that has not been on other boards before, and the mayor can give you his recommendation, since in the packet, he wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah. I visited with Brett Funky and thought that she'd be a good fit for the position with everything that's going to be going on with the new library. And I think that everybody could be comfortable with her. Do you have anything, Monica?
So then for the mayor's recommendation for resolution 73-24 would be Brett Funky, and that's a 5-year term. Remember, the library boards are 6-year terms, but Marie had been 1 year into her term, so it's 5 years, expiring in '29.
Does anybody have questions?
Nope.
I need a motion then.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Gale.
I'll second it.
Second by Oliphant. Roll call.
Delaney?
Aye.
Oliphant?
Aye.
Gale?
Aye.
Passes. Welcome. Consideration of resolution number 74-24, circus tickets for pool staff.
I had brought up the last time that we had a unique opportunity that just kind of fell into our laps, that with everything and the construction going on for our normal National Night Out down at Riverview Park, the circus presented us with coming to Cascade and just so happened to have that same night. So we kind of had a lot of conversations amongst staff as to whether that made sense to do something. We've gotten the agreement from the Economic Development Corp because it's their land out in the industrial park. So the key way to having this be a successful fundraiser for EMS and fire is to sell tickets. Normally, the council has about $1,500 budgeted towards things like we normally get a bounce house, and we pay for music and have a few things like that. And so instead, we'd have a little bit of money going towards media, kind of advertising the circus. I know Chantel's working on some like radio and newspaper advertisements, things like that with some of the money. Businesses that normally the chief goes to who donate towards those causes, he's been kind of reaching out, and we've been advertising saying, hey, like, again, the way that we make money is by selling tickets, and so if you'd like to donate, whether that's buying them for your employees, if you saw on Facebook, like the phone company is having a little trivia thing and then giving away tickets, so they bought it. The grocery store did a wheel over the weekend. So businesses are kind kind of going with that and helping us. And so what I would like, I was bringing it up because the pool staff helped me get the posters ready, and Davis drove to the outlying communities. They were like, that'd be really fun, could we do that? And so we talked with the managers at the pool that thought it would be fun. And if we were to allow the pool staff to then attend the 7:30 performance, and then instead of asking them to pay, I thought it would be a nice way for us to kind of have a little team building at the end of summer for the staff, if the council's willing to allocate somewhere up to, it's $13 a ticket. I'm sure not all of them would come, but it'd be around $430 if everybody came. And again, that helps us get to our goal of selling tickets, which is how we then invest our money back by having a fundraiser for EMS and fire. So up to the council, but that was my recommendation with Davis.
I think it sounds like a really fun idea for the pool kids. They've worked really hard all summer and done a fantastic job. I've spent a lot of time at the pool, and they're always so great there. So I would love to see this happen.
So moved.
That's a,
Oh, I'll second it.
you,
You have the motion?
Oh, I had the motion, he
Yep.
seconded it. Thank you, Mike.
roll call.
Oliphant?
Aye.
Gale?
Aye.
Delaney?
Aye.
Number 12, consideration of resolution number 76-24, purchase of camera system for City Hall EMS Center and Parks.
So I emailed everybody a second quote, and then I think Mike, we've been trying to reach out to people, so Mike's going to update and have a recommendation that we wait 2 more weeks based on what he found out today. So-
Yeah, I got another call in, and I took another gentleman around to the sites today again, so this will be the third, same system, same everything. The two that come in are almost identical. I mean, as far as what they're giving me pricing wise, I'm sure the third's probably gonna be pretty close as well. But I think it'd be, we'll wait till they all kind of filter in here. I think another till the next meeting or so, but I think.
So then we'd have 3.
3 for
And again,
sure.
we have 3 weeks till our next
Yep,
meeting, so.
3 for sure.
This one was from Dubuque.
The second one was from Cedar Rapids. The guy I took today was from Dubuque.
Okay, because there's another Dubuque person that I talked to that wasn't aware of it, so.
Okay.
And they
So-
just need to call out
Yep.
and, gotcha.
They can call here.
But yeah, okay.
If they, I'd have
Yeah,
them
I
probably
took two.
call here, and then we
Yeah.
can get them in touch with
The only
Mike.
thing I don't like about the second quote, the one that we got today,
Mhm.
I don't have it up on.
Oh, the other one.
But the first one is really good at, pinpointing all the things. The other one was just like, just didn't have the breakdowns, just had.
I can
the-
see if reach out to you
Yeah,
and
just
give
had,
more
just
of a
had the, the total price of each section that we were thinking about doing, but, it's like, wow.
Are you
how
saying
much-
like they didn't give the detail at each
Yes,
place
they
of
didn't
what
detail-
cameras or?
Yes, they
okay.
didn't detail it,
So you want more
and-
I can see if he can give me some more detail. When he was trying to get that out to me, I know that they were crunching time to get it to me before tonight, because I told them I had one it there, and they had some people out about who were traveling. so
Theirs was just like.
I'll see if I can get them a little
City
more.
Park, X amount of dollars, and it's
Yep.
like, what's the breakdown, where.
Yep, I can do that.
Mike, as part of this, is that, for both major intersections, is there a 360 view on those?
There's nothing in this quote for those 2 intersections yet.
Fred, do you have any concerns about that?
2 intersections, what are we talking about?
136, 151, and out at McDermott Oil.
Okay, so when we had talked about those in the past and where we were starting in, and we can discuss that as we go, but we had started with the parks in here, and then kind of trying to pick up where we can, like going in and out of the parks and coming up here. We didn't build onto that because then, once we get in the system, we can see where they're gonna be. Then we had talked about that, last time we talked about anyway, that I was under the understanding that we were going to then get Brad and Fred to get us a list of where they want them,
Mhm.
and then cover those, and then we can work with Cascade, because you gotta remember, they gotta run all the stuff to there, and I wanna see what we're looking at for blind spots and where they get used to the system and can go, okay, this is where we really want it, this is where we really want it, and then we give them a map.
And they're all hardwired,
They're all hardwired.
not solar.
So like right now, the phone company has some amount of downtown, but I think because they're paying for all of this, like they knew we were looking at the
Right.
parks.
And then it also give us, because, as I say, I don't want to run too fast. We kind of go in and get this set up and get going too, but we also have to remember that next year we're also going to have the library coming on board. So that'll come up with its own camera system and some, then we may have some cameras that we can move to different positions, instead of have to buy more cameras, you know what I mean? So I think it's just let's get our feet wet, see how it goes, see how it settles.
Do you want to maybe explain what Dubuque, like when you got to talk to the Dubuque guy, finally kind of explain
Yeah,
how
I-
communities roll, like start little and then it
Yeah,
really gets more
start little,
popular?
and they said for them, it's been a learn as you go type thing, you know. One thing that they thought was gonna be great, then they would get centered and the cops would be like, no, we really like that camera, you know. This one really gets what we're looking for, you know, and they go through. And Dubuque is full steam ahead. They're to the point where they have other huge companies coming in and basically donating the cameras to see how they like them. And then they're setting up, going, actually this Thursday, I think it's Thursday, I am taking time off work to go in. I'm doing a full tour of their facility and their software, going through, they're gonna walk me through the do's and don'ts, kind of things that they've learned, tricks of the trade, that type of things. Cameras that work, cameras that don't really work, ones the police officers like, ones that don't. Similar situations like that. I thought it'd be a great opportunity, since I'm kind of dealing in this already, to like get a little more information and see how much, you know, try to be informed, you know, as much as I can and learn from their experience.
Do a walkthrough up at Piasta too.
Okay.
They have a pretty neat system.
I'll,
And I know this whole thing, like the gentleman today I walked through, I mean, Asbury uses the system. Aquin is currently looking at the system, so, I think Western Dubuque uses the same system. Is what I think he told me today, that they put it in for him. Dyersville uses the system, so it's actually pretty.
I'll send the second proposal to the park board and the utility board, and then when you get the third one, we'll make sure everybody gets it.
I'll say, like Chad asked me, I'll reach out and see if they can give me more detail on what I know.
Good idea.
But yeah, and then if you and Brad want to start getting the list going.
Well, sure,
and
we can
point,
do that.
You know,
Yeah,
I mean.
and our main concerns are egresses into town.
Right.
Or leaving town, entrances coming into town, and four-way intersections like here, so we can.
This one
if-
will be covered from this angle
Yeah,
for sure.
if we do have vehicles that are even traveling northbound on 136, it would be nice to have information that we could get right from there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know we even talked about EMS. I had talked to them up there about where they want theirs, you know. So if we get in and we start looking right away and going, hey, let's move. I mean, there's nothing holding anything back. I'm just saying, I'd like to see us get it up and running once, get everybody trained, and then I think it'll be better to move forward after that point, because, you know, I mean, there's gonna be some training, we're gonna have some software time, we're gonna have some time going through getting it all done, getting all bugs worked out and stuff, so. And like Brad, who seems to have had some experience with it, he's like, oh yeah, I guarantee you we're gonna be moving cameras. You know what I mean? It's just one of them. But I just hate to see us go too big and then everybody get to be too overwhelming and then go through, so.
I also got a policy from another community that's had them for a while that is all about the use.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's been talking about like who has access and how you can use the information, and so that's.
And the only people that should have access would be like the police department, Mike, and office staff, like.
Probably just me and Chantel, like Chantel would have access.
So, and
for
I even
her
had
stuff.
mentioned to Lisa that I also would like to see in that process, in there, as part of that process, of like, so, I mean, it'd be really easy for Brad and Fred, like, you know, Brad gets something coming at night or whatever, and he has to go in and check the cameras on the thing, that there would be a form that in the morning he hands over to Fred, Fred signs off, so there's two sets of eyes that said,
That
okay.
you've accessed it.
Yeah, that you access this mainframe. You know, if Fred's, and he can't get a hold of Brad, he needs a sign off or whatever, you know, he could have Lisa sign off on it. And if the two
Right,
police officers
Chantel and
for
I
some
could,
reason
like,
weren't-
tell
yeah,
each other, right.
You two would have to tell each other, you know, or vice versa. There would be a four, but there would have to be a check and balance of sign off, that there was more than one person
With eyes on.
with eyes on it. You know, there is no.
Yep.
So that if later down the road, there was a transgression, then I go back and look at the logs, I got this paper sitting here that says, yep, that was signed off, yep, there was two signatures, yep, there's two signatures,
And you give a reason.
and we have a reason, right?
Should
For
be
every
stating why
date
you're
that went
checking.
in and there was a log into the camera system, we have a date and a reason that goes with it every single time. So there's no no wishy-washy, no chance for abuse. There's,
Accountability.
Yep, accountability and go through. So I think that would be, when we go through this process, like I said, there's training there, but there's also policies that we're gonna have to put in place to make sure everything stays above board, kind of above approach, and make sure that everybody feels safe with it.
And then you'd have the ability to tell if it was logged in on.
Correct.
For sure.
Correct.
So me and
Which
you can watch it.
I also,
When you're drinking your
I also would
beverages.
be in the same boat that when that was a call from the city, that then there would be a signature from me, there would be a signature from, like if Fred said, Mike, I need help with this, there would be my signature, there would be Fred's signature, there would be a date and time even for me. Everybody's included. There's nobody left out of the chain.
No exemptions.
No exceptions. Exactly.
Fred, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
So if we get this third
I needed
one,
the
is,
steps.
if we get the third one, is that gonna be sufficient? And then is there anything else that people want answered from Mike so that we're not?
Yeah, because I do feel like we've kind of beaten this horse to death, because this is what, our third meeting we've talked about this, and I do agree that we need to like vet this process out, but like Mike's done a lot of research on this. I feel like that's why he's our IT guy for the city. We need to trust that too, so.
I'm Sammy. I'm here on behalf of the park board.
Yep.
So I just wanted, one thing that I kind of just wanted to point out is that I see that the pool is still on the resolution. We had mentioned in the park board meeting, and I noticed that the minutes are not.
If it is, Sammy, it's in error.
It's not. The
Yeah,
pool's
we're not voting on the
doing
Like
pool.
it.
on the
Until
agenda,
next year.
I don't have the
It
pool
was
and
on
maybe,
it was on, it was just mentioned in the resolution.
then that was just my mistake to not
Okay.
clean it up. It's
And
not
then-
being
And then
considered.
I also was like looking how it's like still, we had talked about, like I said, in the park board meeting, which I didn't see the minutes on here, that we could remove that line item. So just making sure that that was.
So on the resolution, oh, it says right on here,
says
we'll
with
delay the
in
purchase. What are you looking at?
I just didn't know if it even needed to be on there. Like, can we just recommend to install City Hall, Riverview,
That
and
is
New
what,
City Park?
that is it.
Don't even say, mention the pool in there.
And you
like,
could take a
that
look
could-
at it at a
yeah.
later date.
And then the other thing is that I want the council to consider, I've just noticed, I've listened to a lot of council meetings, I'm obviously on the park board. It seems that a lot of this is for the benefit of the police department or for the city. I haven't seen any budgets yet, and I know that, Lisa, we had talked about kind of where money's gonna be put in order to like help the park board pay for this, the police department, whoever. But I would just like to see those budgets, and then I'd also like the council to consider like how much the park board is responsible for some of these, because Riverview Park, City Park, and if and when the pool, if it's more for the police department or for the city's purpose, obviously the park board gets a lot of requests and.
So I think there's confusion here. So, and this gets wrapped up into a thing. So how's the best way I can think of to put this in going? So think of it as like I'm the parent and I have 4 kids, right? And their allowance is $5 a piece, right? And Sarah needs an extra pair of shoes, and I tell Sarah that she can get an extra pair of shoes. So I'm gonna give her an extra $5 in her allowance to go through. So your budgets are gonna have that money from the city for the cameras, earmarked for them, put into your account. And then when the cameras come out and we buy the cameras, that
goes
money
back
that
out.
we put extra into the account will just come back out. It does not change your balance at all. What money you get from the city will still be the same amount you were getting anyway. We're just gonna put extra into your thing and then take it back out for the cameras. It doesn't affect your budget whatsoever.
I guess, and forgive my misunderstanding, but I guess why is it just to be seen on paper that it's coming out of the park board? Or
Right, so
why does the city have to
for
put money in there?
for most stuff with city, like roads have to come out of, we have to have an account for roads. We have to have an account for, water and sewer. We have to have different accounts for different things. And as the paper trail goes and they do their audit through here, they see that the money for the cameras in the park, because we put cameras in the park, that the money went in, the money came out, and it goes onto these each accounts. It makes it trackable to where all the money's going. So that is why it's done that way, so that it's not just one giant sum of thing and then all this money's coming in and going out, coming in and going out. It goes to actual accounts and then, so that it shows where it went and what it was for. And
We
then
kind
just
of,
like-
yeah, we talked about, I think Megan asked that at the last
Yeah,
meeting.
so.
Yeah,
And
because
just
I felt the same way you did, Sammy. I was like,
Yeah.
why is this? This seems like a lot of extra work, but like with the way the accounting has to go and we have to show everything to the state, they've dropped even more, like, especially with the money that we give to the different departments has like strictly accounted for. It's
like, the way
think
I
that
explain
that's-
it is that the budget should tell a story. And the story are safer because we have cameras in there, then that should be reflective of how much we spend on a park. It is a tool for the police department, but like their camera for specifically the police department would be charged to them. For City Hall, it'll be charged to City Hall, the pool. So you want to tell, like, that example, that if it costs you X, and what he's talking about is like, you've had 50,000 has kind of been the number. And in the budget, it was 55,000 because we didn't have the numbers at the time. And if it ends up to be 58, then the council will take 3 more and make that number 58, so that the 50 is still the normal number that the park board is being used to, is kind of how we explained it. And then like, I think I had it in front of me because Megan asked the question. I went into my office last time and grabbed the budget, but like in Fred's account, there's like a capital equipment, and it had 2,000 or 3,000 before, and then we upped it to 5. So that's the proper way, as opposed to just saying like, here's the camera account, and then that doesn't really tell the story. It does tell the story of cameras that we spend 20,000, 25,000, but it doesn't reflect like where they are. And so that's just kind of more government accounting, and when I approve any bills, that's really how I try to divvy it up. And so I think that's what we're trying to say, is the 50 is still going to stay the 50, and that the council's, at the end of the day, committed to the cameras, if that's what they vote on here coming up, and therefore they're allocating additional funds outside of the normal that each department gets to be able to help fund those.
Okay, so then, eventually, once council does decide on this, will then we see our budget, and will it be included in that?
Yeah, I think this came up 2 weeks ago, and we haven't had a meeting since then, so I think we said that we would put it on August, or I can just email it to everybody, but.
Okay, that would be great. And then, is council voting on whether or not to move forward with these tonight?
No.
Or- Okay.
2 weeks, or 3 weeks.
Okay, just making sure, because
Yep.
I just was making sure, because I know the park board wanted
No,
to
that's
make sure
fine.
we got the second quote and talked to Magnolia as well,
Yep.
so, okay.
But
We
I
just
do
got it
think
this
we
morning.
need to make the vote at the next meeting. We talked about this a lot.
Yeah, in your next meeting, there'll be a
Well, we
park
need
board
quotes.
meeting first.
However,
You can't go by one quote.
however, though, I think at our last park board meeting, we did all agree to have a special meeting if needed. We
Yeah,
just
but
hadn't
because
gotten-
we're delaying it, yeah. And we knew, like I sent it out to the council, but basically Mike, by the time I emailed it out to everybody on the council, he had just gotten the call from the
Yep.
third guy, and so we just knew that we weren't voting tonight.
Definitely.
So
Thank you.
you'll
Thank
have
you.
your meeting.
So I need a motion on Resolution 7624 to postpone that.
I'll make a motion to postpone.
I don't even think you,
we're
you
just
just don't.
tabling
Yeah,
it.
you
We'll just table it.
You just won't take any
Okay.
action.
Number 13, consideration of ordinance number 15-24, water services, abandoned services, and lead pipes. This is the final of 3 readings.
So we've talked about this a couple times. This just kind of accentuates what the DNR is looking at for lead services and clarifying in our code that as we find lead services, that we expect them to be replaced from a safety perspective for water.
I'll make a motion on ordinance 15-24.
Motion by Oliphant,
Second.
second by Delaney. Roll call.
Gale,
Aye.
Delaney,
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Number 14, consideration of ordinance number 16-24, noise ordinance. This is the second of 3 readings.
Again, this was to address, Officer Brad Stainer kind of came, usually noise complaints happen more in the evening, which is probably why he gets a few more calls than the chief does. And we really just found that it was very generic. If you remember, it kind of just had like if it annoys somebody, which is obviously difficult to enforce. And so I did want to clarify, I think I put it in the memo, that I did have a citizen who had read it, who owns a landscaping company during the summer months and also does snow removal, that however, it got reported back to that person that it made it seem like no one could plow snow at night. And so I, thought, okay, like I actually pulled it up while we were speaking and made sure that it was clear that that is in the exception. So as we function in a world of winter wonderland, that people who plow, obviously they plow at night in manufacturing facilities. And we clarified that they just had misinformation and that is an exception. So that's the only comment that I've heard since our first reading, so this would be the second, and remember, it was the whole new section, and then ordinance 17 is just clarifying that we reference back to the new section.
I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Delaney.
Second.
Second by Oliphant, roll call.
Delaney,
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Number 15, consideration of ordinance number 17-24, noise nuisance, second of 3 readings.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Oliphant,
Second.
second by Gale, roll call.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Number 16, consideration of resolution number 75-24, approval to hire an appraisal for public library at 301 First Avenue West.
So before we actually kind of make a final decision at some point here, before the library is no longer the current library, and we move to the new one, which will likely be a late February, early March, I do have some inquiries about the building, kind of people asking what we think if we were to sell it, what that value would be. And really, in public buildings, it's difficult to make a determination like that without an appraisal. None of our appraisers that are right here in Cascade do commercial ones. That's why you see someone from out of town. They only do, I did reach out to the one that does it in town, and he only does residential. So I think it would be a wise investment of the $1,400 to have that done. My goal, if we're going to sell it, one of the things that I want to kind of work through to make sure the council has that right in how we advertise it is, instead of just saying who's willing to pay the most for the building, we could definitely set some sort of a minimum. But I think one of the things that we want to do, because you have control, obviously, as to what happens with that building in the future, is only looking at the highest price and not what the person's going to do with the building. I don't think is wise when it's in such a high profile area. So we don't want it to just say turn into storage or something like that. So you can do a combination of what are you willing to pay for it in a bidding process, and then in the request for proposals, it could be talk to us about what you're going to do with the building. That's important, I think. That would certainly be my recommendation, but I think it's hard to even have a conversation about what that minimum is without getting some sort of market value. And so looking at what it's worth, I think is a good starting point, to at least for the council to have a conversation.
What you got, Fred?
One thing that I've considered, we've run out of space. And if eventually we're looking at hiring a third full-time officer, moving across the street would be an ideal position for us, or an ideal spot over there. We could park in the back, we could bring people in for interviews. The building, we wouldn't have to do a whole lot of work on it to fit our needs. So that's a consideration, hopefully.
I've actually had people in town suggest that same thing, Fred. I don't disagree with you. The only thing is we have to put a new roof on it, correct?
Yeah, and we have a situation with the neighboring property who's going to make some improvements. And so the roofing guy that did the roof 33 or 4, he wasn't sure years ago, was on, he was here in town, and I need to get a hold of the fire department because he just called me before the meeting, or this afternoon, and he also looked at their roof. So yes, we do have to do roof improvements at a minimum. But I still think, again, you have to look at what's the value of it and how you balance all of that if you're giving it to the police department or selling it, that it still
I
makes
think
sense.
having a value on the building and knowing what it's worth, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Then we can later decide what we're going to do with it.
I think you do that irregardless.
I think
Right.
so, too.
That's why I just think it's a wise early step, and then
Yep.
whether it stays a city building or
Yep.
gets sold.
But if we're seriously considering that, and I don't have an issue with it, I just have a hard time with justifying spending $1,400 on the appraisal if we think we're going to keep it in the city.
Well, I think you have a lot of stuff to look at, though, because having a whole nother facility, like the new library, is expensive. And so before we just say space needs, we got to look at all the costs. So, which I haven't started looking at yet, but.
Yep.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, thank you, Fred.
I need a motion on Resolution 75-24.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Delaney,
I'll second it.
second by Gale, roll call.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Reports, Fred?
You really are getting your steps in, Fred.
No, just kind of a reminder, we aren't having the National Night Out. We are going to be doing the circus, so we're trying to get things prepared for that. Hopefully, we've got enough staff helping us out. I think we might have a few volunteers talking to Bert that might be able to get a few volunteers to help us with some traffic control that night, so.
We have enough
hopefully
parking
things
out
will
there,
work.
they parking on the grass out there, or what the plan is?
I hope so.
Unless it's
Um,
muddy, yes.
Yeah, if it's muddy, I have talked to a couple businesses out there, Butcher
have
Block
space.
being one of them, you know, they're kind of right in that area. He said as long as they're not in there, they have no problem allowing people to use their parking lot, so.
That was kind of fun.
Hopefully, the weather stays dry until after the circus
Yeah.
and things don't get torn up out there real bad, so.
That makes me think about that a little bit, that we should probably look at that area and see if we can get some directing signs for people going out there if we're gonna have them park in a certain way.
Yeah.
Usually, like, what I've seen that works the best is, like, you get, like, the guys at Public Works could give us little stakes, and then you do, like, a yellow line, so then you let people, like, park at the yellow line.
Yeah.
So that kind of becomes, like, your
We should
center.
probably start looking at
Yeah.
organizing that part of it if we're gonna do that, so that way it's not chaos.
And normally, for those of you that have been on the council, you normally are on hot dog duty. So it would be helpful if you're willing to still give up that night.
Parking duty?
Or
Hot
some,
dog.
we do have like
Hot
someone,
dog control.
somebody have to do something at the ticket thing.
Hot dogs, that's
I
what
thought there
we
was
usually do,
something
is hot
that
dogs,
day.
right? Yeah.
But
Oh, so we do have to do it, we just already have it.
Yeah.
Right, so there could be some jobs, even if it's just directing traffic
Yeah.
till people kind of get, because even
I
if
mean,
it's
we
just
could
the
still do
5.
hot dogs, we just hand them as they go in or something.
We were told we may not do that. You
Yeah.
have to buy cotton candy from the
Oh, yeah,
circus
that's right,
food
that's right,
tent.
that's right.
they have their own food, we
Yeah,
can't do
we
hot
can't do
dogs,
that,
unfortunately. No, other than that, I didn't have anything else.
Thank you.
Anything from city council?
Thanks for showing up to being at the pool thing. I saw you there a lot, and I really, really appreciate it. I felt much safer knowing you were there.
I was
Little
around.
guardian angel.
I was around. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Library furniture.
Talk fast.
Library furniture, we are still kind of tweaking some of that, so we did have a really productive meeting, figured out additional furniture. We're darn close to the budget number, but we needed to like sit on some stuff, and so we're having another meeting, and I don't remember the date, I apologize, but in a few weeks.
I know that's gotta be kind of hair pulling too, trying to.
Yeah.
get that, so.
Exactly. Tomorrow, we're going to take the library staff over to the site. Melissa is going to bring whichever part-timers are available, and I'll tour them around. So we're working on that. If you notice, there's little concrete mixing machines there, so the masons are in
Masons.
town, and so it'll start to
Yeah.
not look so construction-y and start to look like a building. I think that's all I have for that. And then one of the things that we're going to talk about at planning and zoning that I wanted to give you a heads up on quickly is somewhere in the world of past what people were allowed to do without a zoning code that said it was okay. Our zoning code only says you can have a 6-foot fence maximum. Doesn't ever clarify what zones. And we have the industrial area that has 8-foot fences. And then I don't know who remembers the Aquin used to have an
No.
8-foot fence, and they had to get a variance because they put it up and it was only supposed to be 6. So I'm working with Delaney's, the ag and the mechanical area. They have an 8-foot fence, and I'm not willing to give them a permit, but I think it's a wise choice for us to say that when you're in industrial and commercial areas, it's allowed to be taller. So I am gonna reach out to planning and zoning and try to get that going, because Delaney's putting a fence will be helpful. You know, it's obviously a busy place with a lot of stuff, and I met with him today, and have been talking to the neighbors and stuff, so.
Tell them to put a vinyl fence behind my yard so I don't have to look at their crap.
I saw your little fence there.
I think that'd be a great, I mean, planning and zoning, that should be
Right.
their.
I
that's
think
their-
they will,
their
but
name.
I'm just letting you know, because
Yep.
I usually try to let you know.
Oh, tired.
I'm applying to the Woodward Communication Foundation for another, we have not applied to them yet for a library grant. That's due on August 1, so I'm working on that. And then, because you all wanted to know about pool bashes, the next one is August 8th, which is before the next council meeting. So it'll be Tuesday is National Night Out, and then the 8th,
Is
Thursday
that also
is
the
bash.
chamber golf outing?
It is. I didn't know that, but yeah. I didn't know until it was on Facebook.
I
That
just
was
saw
the
that
night.
today too when I got the email.
So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Anything else? Public comment, limit of 3 minutes per person, only items on this agenda. Seeing none, if there's nothing else for the betterment of the community, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Gale, second by Oliphant. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are you box casting?
I'm getting it right now.
Do you have a previous engagement?
I